Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Conant show. And we are in Woodstock, and this is Wednesday, what are we, the 7th? August 2020, 2019 rather. Yeah, I was at the filling out membership cards for a couple last night at the movie theater, and of course, we write the date for the following year when it expires, and I was writing 2020, and it just was kind of so strange to be looking at that number coming up on us in just a few months. But then, what does that really mean? And I've been looking into a lot of different YouTube content, original content creators. And it's an interesting thing that certain topics have become verboten and demonetized and shadow banned and all of these terrible things that they can do to limit your access to your audience. And in so doing, is this the bad mic? Okay, so all right, I'm going to readjust it a little bit because this mic just sort of flops around. Anyway, and so in looking at all these different issues surrounding the subject matter, there's this old quote, and I can't remember who it was quoted from, but it goes something like that: if you want to know who's in control, just just look around you and see who you're not allowed to talk about. and there's some subject matter that's kind of really being suppressed, and one of it's the grand solar minimum, which I've touched on a few times. Another is the dangers of the 5G technology, wireless technology in general. And another one is the Great Tartaria, or Tartarian Empire. And this is a huge nation, possibly the greatest empire in, I guess, landmass in recent ages. And we know very, very little about it because it appears that the Romanovs, who took power in the late 1700s, early 1800s in what is today Russia, obliterated all historical reference. But it wasn't just the Romanovs or the government of the day. It was around the world. And this Tartarian Empire had a kind of an architecture, and as some presenters on YouTube are calling it, antiquitech, antique technology. And it refers to free energy or wireless energy, and that was pervasive all through their empire, which was global. It was a global empire, and but largely its home territory, you might say, would have been from the Kazakhstan to the Pacific Ocean and north. So it was huge. It was comprised as much of Asia and Europe, which is pretty much all that whole area. And if you can look up old photographs of various cityscapes from different times, you'll notice that the architecture is very advanced. There's a lot of different qualities to this architecture that are unusual, and some of it is still in our public buildings today. And like many of the public libraries attributed to, was it Carnegie, who was claimed authorship of building these buildings. Really, they look much older than something built in the 1800s, 1880s, 1890s. And so this sort of all wraps around to this idea that we have a date, and the date that we're going by is a Christian date that theoretically starts somewhere around the fall of Rome, with the with the rise of Jesus, or the occurrence of the Jesus character. And I think that the person Jesus was a real person. But I'm also starting to swing towards the idea that our history is really a hodgepodge of stories that really don't tell us much of who we are and why we're here and how we got here in this day and age. And
I downloaded Chrome, so now we can watch YouTube videos. If you want to tell me what to look
I want to stick to just still images. If you can find any images that look nice on screen, any of the Chilean earthquake is a specific interest. There's some really wonderful old photographs, and looking at these old cities. And it's like San Francisco too is another one. If you can find any old stills of San Francisco prior to the earthquake, would be great, or the Great Fire, earthquake, whatever that was. I believe that was 1908. But that early period is very fascinating to look at, because especially in the Chilean earthquake of 1906, their infrastructure there was electrified, just unbelievable infrastructure and build out of all kinds of utility poles, light poles. They had all kinds of electrical service, and this is a coastal city in Chile. I can't remember which city. And in looking at these photographs, I said, okay, this is very out of place looking technology. Why is everything so wired up? And just exactly what are some of these devices that we're looking at? And it's an analogous to the 5G kind of technology that's being foisted upon us now. Now, there's this other concept out there that's really quite fascinating. Sure. Yeah. Now, if there's any way, do you know how to enlarge that any? Yeah, that's fabulous. All right, this actually shows people. Many of these photographs don't have very many people. Now, this is San Francisco, 1906, and we can see some not much in the way of detail, but you can see that is this the fire? Is this a fire going on in the background there?
It's the San Francisco Mission District burning in the aftermath of the San Francisco earthquake.
Okay.
The original caption reads, probably Fulton Street near Gulf.
Yeah.
This was the edge of the fire district.
I see. Yeah, so a lot of what I'm looking for is somewhat occluded. These are okay. This is kind of an interesting, looking at this photograph of the city scene here. Now, San Francisco in 1906 had only been theoretically built since the gold rush of the 1850s, right? 1840s. So that's a 60-year period, and we're looking at...
No, the 49ers.
Right, okay, so 1850, let's call 1850 to 1908 is about 60 years, 58 years. So we're to believe in 50 years you're going to have this kind of infrastructure already built out, and there's already quite a bit of something along the lines of street lamps and utility poles that you can see in the background. Yeah. And this is why I say, looking at these old photographs with a fresh pair of eyes is a really good thing to do. There's also, what do you call those, rails? Okay, go back up one. That's a good one too. All right. These pillars, and now, again, this is 1906?
Yeah.
Look at look at these are modern, not skyscrapers, but darn close to skyscrapers. These are well built out buildings here, and what are they doing in 1906 on the West Coast when the United States had barely gotten off the ground here for 100 years maybe by that point. The real populating and occupying with settlers and well, I guess they would call them settlers in those days, but it would be a kind of colonist, had only really got going in 50 years prior. And here, where did the masons come from? Where did the builders come from? Where did the foundries come from that made all of the metal work that goes into the yes, well, there's an interesting idea about what Freemasonry is. Freemasons are actually guys who are occupying something that was already built and calling it their own. That's one theory. So here we have some real mega destruction going on. But it is a good image here because you can see the build out. This is San Francisco. In 1906 was a major city. It was well built out. It goes as far as the camera can see of city planning, well planned out, and quite large buildings. Another view, you can see the. Those are
gas lights?
Or were they? And if they were, then you have all the infrastructure of gas, being built out.
These were the trolleys?
Right, that was the cable cars and trolleys, all this electrification. And one has to wonder, where did all this infrastructure come from? Where did all the materials come from? All the brick, all the, a city doesn't get built in 10 years or 20 years. Well, that becomes an interesting thought of what was actually happening here. Was it an earthquake or was other?
This one's okay.
Right, exactly. And then on the left side of the picture, it doesn't look bothered at all.
Yeah, not like a fire.
Yeah, let's see what else we got here. It's not enough detail. We're not sure quite how to enlarge things or zoom in on them on this. In this older computer here. But this is a good picture too. Now, again, here you can see quite a bit of, to me, almost anomalous level of development. And again, architecture is just quite amazing. Again, yeah, quite a bit of that. What was it servicing? Did they have phones? Did they have TVs? What did they have going on there to require so much electrification besides light bulbs? But we're told that they didn't have light bulbs.
In 1906?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Thomas Edison was still developing stuff.
The radio was first used in 1920.
Right. Okay, so then we another impressive kind of a destruction going on there.
Oh, I see the earthquake.
Right. That's why I put that up on.
National Archives. Oh, yeah, look at all the wires.
Right. Look at all those wires. It's right. That's a very good point. So if you open up another tab, I can. There you go. Look at that. Look at that cityscape there. That's a lot of build out.
See, there's a gas light there.
Well, that's hard to say what it is. Anyway, there you go. That's an interesting picture. Now, is that also San Francisco again? We're still in San Francisco. I mean, 1906. Look at those buildings. Look at the dome on that one on the left, that prominent building on the left.
That's a church.
Well, they call them churches, but that's part of the free energy devices that the Tartarians were using. And the theory goes, or look at that, look at that, look at that. That's way up there. and there were these very grand mansions that had very high doorways and windows and floors and ceilings. There you go. There's some nice utility pole action. So here you have all this electrification and horse and buggy. Something happened, folks. Yeah. Out of place technology. If you want to put into the Google search engine, okay, that's a photograph that's very interesting. Look at the scale of the build out for 1906, and this is only a 50-year-old city. All right, you see what I'm saying?
41 days after the disaster.
But look at it's the whole horizon is cityscape, and one has to question, look at that, how and they wiped it right out. What did they really wipe out though? There's a structure right there in the middle of that picture that's kind of curious. Nope, that little strange thing there, it survived survived that. Just there you go. Okay, now this is one of those. The building on the right is one of those really well-built, older style, Tartarian type buildings, and it seems to have not hardly shifted or moved at all compared to the buildings on the left, especially that one there, yeah. And which seems to be of a less elegant, structure. Again, these are very modern looking to me. These the high-rise buildings there. But if you could put in the search engine "foundling trains," and then pull up, this is fabulous. Look at that. They call it Romanesque or Greco-Roman architecture, and it's all over the world, folks, in old buildings everywhere. From New York City, there's these structures, and a lot of times you'll see, in the old pictures, them renovating the buildings or digging them out. And oh gosh. Grand houses of the 1890s. See what that grand houses or grand mansions, things of that nature. See if anything comes up, and then once you get into that, you click on images and see if any good old, really these fantastic old that and state capitol buildings from also from the older era, 1880s, things like that. Those of that nature. We'll see what comes up. So what I'm getting to here is something happened. Oh, foundling trains. I'm sorry. That's what I was having you look at. Photographs of foundling trains. And this is a phenomenon that was worldwide, and it went on between the 1840s right on through to the early 19-teens. And in this period of time, especially unwed mothers, their children would be confiscated by the state and put onto these foundling trains, where they would be sent out to these rural areas or even foreign countries to replace the populations that were there for farmers. And so something happened in the 1840s to the 1880s all across the world where many of these farm families had nobody to work. I guess there was a great disaster of some kind, and they needed a workforce, and so they just shipped all these children all over the place. And in the United States, and I think in one decade alone, between say 1860 to 1870, or was it 1870 to 1880, something like that, in one decade, several hundreds of thousands of children were exported from the cities out to the rural areas, out to all kinds of places in the Midwest, to the California, and
It's not easy to find. They're deflecting.
no images of foundling trains.
Well, they're hard to pull up.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason.
I mean, I'll show you what I have.
Unless your family is really well documented.
You see, history of rail transportation, it's not giving me, I'm going foundling trains. See what I mean?
So they're not giving you pictures of children standing next to the trains.
No.
What's that one? Check. What's that one say?
History of rail transportation.
No. Yeah, they're deflecting. It should pop right up. Orphan trains. Try that. Maybe that'll work. Yeah. 1870s, 1880s. Sure. It went on for quite some time. There you go.
Okay, this looks like a good
Um,
Wow. Over a 75-year period,
from city to farm.
100 indigenous children. Yeah.
Indigent. Wanted homes for children. Yeah. Has it got much in the way of imagery? Yeah. Well, there you go. That doesn't help us though. I just wanted stills, and I don't want to step on anybody's copyright.
Here, how about this?
E-
Group outside of Children's Aid Society Central Office around 1895.
Yeah, they were still doing it.
Hold satchels with their belongings as they prepared to travel west.
Yeah, there was a period where you could actually take your child to the post office and ship your child anywhere that you could advertise your child was available for, and you could sell your child to some family, and then they would replace that child's name with their own names. So this is an interesting thing because, well, unless you have a really well documented history in your family, you go back 100 years, 200 years, there you may not.
Listen to this. With the help of funds donated by New York's wealthiest families, Grace and other organizers began gathering groups of children and sending them west.
That's right.
Wow. It was called placing out.
Again, this something happened. Children's Aid Society. They were 30,000 orphans, 6% of New York's population. Yeah, I wouldn't trust this site for being particularly honest about what was really going on, because a lot of we got some serious incongruities with, for example, Tartaria, which I like to bring up, because the level of technology that they had and how that fits with the disaster cycles on the planet that we have with our particular star, our sun, which is what they call a variable star. It's not. There you go. Now that's one of those grand mansions that there's great question as to who actually built it and when, and that really many of the cities across the land, the United States, Canada, this was always here in some people's views, and that there was a great depopulation or catastrophe that was global. And some people call it a mud flood. Some people call it, well, they don't know what wars. These ridiculous number of wars. I mean, if the history that we're given is all, Greek and Roman and European wars, which just seems to be like this endless cycle of warring countries. Without a pause, seemingly, can we even recall a period where there was no wars on the planet for 10 years even? I don't think so. So what's all this war about? And that's when, in looking at all these old photographs from these different presenters and their arguments, we're just touching on it tonight very quickly, just so you all get a sense of what I'm thinking. So what do we got here?
This video looks at a specific hand symbol representing a secret society.
Uh-huh.
The Tartarian world order.
Quite.
Well, maybe that's a little.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the photography, because the photographs shows the architecture, and the architecture is that and all of the utility poles and the wires going on. I mean, back in 1900, 1906, if we're looking at all of this electrical infrastructure having been built out with trolley cars and God knows what else they were using, because we really don't know that today what was going on. That wasn't built overnight either, right? All the rails had to be made. All of that support infrastructure had to have been built for it to have been photographed by 1906 or 1908. So I want to go back to other pieces of information that are really, really vital that we should examine, and that is this suppression of information regarding this activity of our sun, or the lack of it. We've had something like more than 160 days this year without sunspots, and that's a big deal. That means a lot. We're only halfway through the year, and most of this period of time has been without sunspots, and sunspots are solar storms that create heat. And weather.com makes these pronouncements that this has been the hottest year ever. Well, they've been saying that a lot for a lot of years now, and the stats don't really show that. And then we also have a problem with the data collection for atmospheric temperatures, and that is many of the recording stations are on the tarmacs of airports, or on the rooftops of buildings, or in other locations that kind of jack up the ambient temperatures around the devices, the recording devices, the measuring thermometers and such. So there's that. But more critical is our food supply, folks. And I went on about this a few weeks ago, and I'm going to go on about it again because it really hasn't gotten any better. The agricultural USDA agriculture report for, say, corn should be coming out real soon, an updated one. And we're looking at like 50% across the board crop loss in the corn sector. 50% is a lot, folks. And the flooding is just finally starting to subside in many of the grow regions of our country from the excessive amounts of snow that had happened across the country, but really in the Rockies and in the plains. Record amounts of snow. And in fact, up on Mount Washington in New Hampshire, there is still a snowfield in the first week of August that people are snowboarding on. And so for it to be the hottest year ever and this isn't just local. I mean, this is a lot of things going on with this fluctuations in the jet stream of our northern hemisphere. So it affects both hemispheres, as a matter of fact. But what goes on is a perturbation or a change in the amplitude of the jet stream. And it's like a sine wave. Ordinarily, it kind of has a soft curve to it, and that gives us our cold fronts, coming down out of Canada, and warm fronts coming up from the Gulf of Mexico, and then you get weather. That's how the warm and moist air masses interact with the cold, dry ones, and storms spin up, and you get tornadoes, you get hail, you get all kinds of things. You get weather, and during a period of magnetic fall off or a magnetic pole reversal of our planet, which seems to be going on, the magnetism of our planet is weaker and weaker, and they call it the magnetosphere. And the magnetosphere of the sun is also weakening in a weakening state because its poles are flipping as well. And these cycles are very massive cycles. A pole shift or a pole flip on a planet, our planet, is measured in a certain dynamic in the rocks. Various rocks act as a kind of recording devices, and so there are methods of sort of analyzing the magnetism of, say, volcanic rock that when it erupted and it solidifies as the lava solidifies, like the lava solidifying over in Hawaii from this year's eruption, will give a magnetic imprint of what the planet was doing in the iron of the rock as it solidifies. Okay, so that's kind of how that works, sort of. That's a very loose explanation, but it's kind of how it works, how they measure these things. And so it is a cycle, a magnetic pole reversal of the planet. North becomes south. Was thought to happen gradually in some camps, and is thought to happen very quickly in others. So we don't know, because our civilization, our human consciousness today has not lived. There's no living person that's lived through a magnetic pole reversal, so we have no idea what's coming as this phenomenon unfolds. Added to that,
Did these guys know it? This is supposed to be the supreme monarch of the Tartarian Chinese.
hard to say, the Chinese.
Supreme monarch of the Chinese Tartarian Empire?
Yes, well, that would have been the Tartarian, like prefecture, kind of like in Canada they have, Alberta provinces, and we have states. So the Chinese prefecture in Tartaria would be analogous to a state within the overall empire. Yeah, they did.
In 16, it says it's 16.
Well, we can't really trust dates, so we can only estimate what we think we're looking at. Now that looks like to be a woodblock print, or I mean, is that a drawing? Is that a it's an engraving, so that's some kind of a lithographic or a wood yeah, some kind of material. But it is a curious, always good to look at these old things, at the detail.
It was published in 1923.
Yeah.
It's found in an embassy from the East India Company, the Grand Tartar Shah.
What's a great old city in India?
Well, let's see. A lot of them were westernized.
Calcutta.
Yeah, that's
Try see if you can get Calcutta in the 1800s. See if you can find a photograph of Calcutta in the 18 or any other of the any of the big well-known cities. Odessa.
what year?
I don't know, 1890s. Stick with that. It's a curious period. The kind of the end of the Gilded Age, which is another interesting, concept. So what I want to impress upon all of you out there is that food production is a real, a real serious business, because that's what civilization needs the most. We can drive fancy cars, and we can fly airplanes, and we can do all kinds of neat stuff with the smartphone. But at the end of the day, if you want to live another day, you have to eat. You have to have water. You have to have clean air. You have to have those basics that we learn about in the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts. Those real simple things are what we really actually do need. And the fact that the jet streams are all out of flux, and it has nothing to do with carbon dioxide. That's just nonsense. It has everything to do with the behavior of our sun and our planet, and their electrical connection between each other, and the fact that more cosmic energy is reaching the surface, and that is impacting our emotions and our thinking, as well as all this Wi-Fi stuff going on, folks.
Do you think there's any Wi-Fi here in Calcutta?
I wasn't really looking. I was on a jag of my thought there, but we do need to really consider growing food locally, folks. And anybody who's saving seeds, that's a real important thing. And let's look at Calcutta there. What's the time frame again? Is these pictures 1890s?
I'm just wondering if there was any Wi-Fi technology.
I don't know. Let's see. Now that we have these fresh eyes, what can we see? What can we see in Calcutta in the 1890s? It looks like the same photograph again, isn't it? All right, there we go. I mean, here's this kind of building architecture again. And who built it? And how old is it? And look at this fabulous, monument. You got some incredible looking ships out there, the masts of those ships.
Precision.
Right, now here you got a lot of ships or boats. They're rather large, but they're not rowboats, and where's the sails?
Oh, I think they put long sticks and they troll around. It looks.
They just push those big heavy things along, huh? All right, so that's all right. Wait, back up a little bit. So, what kind of structures are those? Are we looking at trolleys there? Are those buildings?
Here?
Yeah.
Looks like a horse.
Is there a horse in front of that?
Yeah.
Wow. Strong horse.
I don't know. These are horses.
Yeah, you got some interesting posts just ahead of it, up ahead of it. There you go, up in that little area there. Yeah. All right, let's see what else they got. Oh, yeah, you can click on that and that'll give you another. No?
How do I get rid of this?
Escape, maybe? They're giving us lots of pictures of ships. I'm more interested in the architecture.
Here it comes. Look at that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Court scene from Eden Garden. Wow.
There you go. It would be raise a flag for the Antiquitech people, because it's the tops of these buildings often look like that structure there, but way up high, and there's always a spike at the top, and this is how they are. The theory is this is how they were drawing electricity from the air, or right from the right from the air, from the ether. Okay, again, these are arches. Look at this architecture. Now, this is Calcutta again, still. Fabulous architecture. Who built it? Arabs? I mean, it's kind of arabesque looking, but it's also got the Roman arch, and it's got very Tartarian-liking spiky things all along the top. And every so often, yeah. It's kind of a rural picture. I'm more interested in the architecture. All right, so it's... so those are some topics to look into, folks, is the Tartarian Empire and what the heck happened to it. Where did it go? What did it leave behind? And another is what happened in the 1840s. You know, another one is even prior to that. Napoleon's famously bad decision to go and take on Russia in the winter. With, I guess he had marched, 1 million men up there, or close to what his army was, and he came back with less than 10% due to, starvation and privation and war. Napoleon's Waterloo, as it were, and something happened there, and it's hard to.
Here's a famous one.
Is that the Taj Mahal?
Yeah. That's built on top of the Shiva temple, so Hindus get uptight about this. It's a mausoleum to Shah Jahan's favorite wife
Right.
around the 1500s.
And then, and you have that those curious, very curious tops of the buildings. Yep. It'd be interesting. Maybe you can pull up some images that you'll get a lot of them. New York City, 1890s. That'll be a good one. That might be interesting. So the point that I'm getting to, folks, is that there seems to be a hidden history. Something happened, and with the more I look into these foundling trains and orphan trains and the programs that they had, there was this. First, there was a great movement of people across the continent to get your 40 acres and a mule, homesteading and such. And then they had to ship all these children out to follow up, to populate these places. Okay, so there's some interesting street lamps there. Are they gas? Are they electric? And there's one of those great mansions. I don't know that mansion is even still there. That would be Central Park. Again, look at the architecture in this building. It's just a fabulous. All right, on the upper left, you can see the wiring. Up top, upper left. There you go. Those are the insulators, and there's tons of wires coming off of that. So, okay, New York City was already well electrified by 1906 or 1890s. This is 1890s, correct? Yeah. That's hard to see what's going on there. But there's definitely a well laid out road there. There you go.
That's where John Lennon lived.
1890. That's an Antiquitech building right there. It's got the little pointy spires, and it would be great if we could get images of these grand hotels and their rooms and stuff. Okay, the only real difference in my view there's the trolley cars again. Great deal of electrification. Those trolley cars have already been operating for some time. It doesn't look like they're like you don't see them building it out. It's well established, and the horse and buggies are just part of the traffic with it. Very curious stuff. Yeah. Okay, what's going on here?
Here's laying the cable line for the trolleys.
For Union Square. (1892), folks. That looks very contemporary. These buildings. We haven't
Progressed much.
we haven't progressed much at all. Look at the columns and the size of the masonry in that behind that trolley back in there. Yeah, you'll see that in a lot of these old buildings. That's sort of the remnant of that Tartarian influence, or the Roman arch. What the hell is or is it a Roman arch? And one of the things that I was very started thinking about when in looking at these old pictures of cities and seeing how advanced they were. There's a tower or a pole way in the background there, right behind on the left. Look at that. Again, that's stunning. I mean, it's kind of funny. The old experience. Well, they don't make things like they used to. No, they sure don't. The scale of those arches, just incredible architecture.
First electric taxis.
Yep, electric vehicles. And electric cars, not a new invention, folks. There they are. There they are, 1890s. What are we not being told? Like those buildings, that building in the background there, that doesn't look like a new building.
Is that the Flatiron building?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Looks like the Flatiron building.
It sort of does, yeah. So the sun goes into these cycles, and then we have really bad weather on the surface, and that's where we have to start being smart. And I don't mean to be, an alarmist or anything, but it's kind of time that, we got to get real about, growing food and canning and preserving and drying. That is a good image there. That's another good image. Look again. You got the domes on top. These fantastic architecture, which may very well be part of this free energy devices that may have been employed not that long ago.
By those in the know.
Well, again, this is a technology that we. Well, here's what the thought is. I mean, look at that, folks. I mean, come on. That's a very modern looking city. That's over 100 years ago. Superstructures, over 100 years ago. Now that by 1890, that bridge had been there already for a while. So what I'm trying to get across to y'all is that. Well, there you go. There's a nice phone pole. Look at that utility pole there. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's pictures from the 1906 pictures down in Chile, which I couldn't find them very quickly tonight on this computer, but hopefully I'll dig them up for you all. It's just unbelievable how advanced it was. You know, they had electrical contrivances up, you know, crazy amount of electrical devices going on in Chile in same period, 1890s, 1910. Yeah. Again, there's that bridge in the way background is reminiscent of a aqueduct in Rome. That again, here's one of this original site buildings, right? That they tore them down. They had just built these buildings. Let's go back one. Go back that one. All right. You know, many of these buildings were said to have been built in the 1880s, and then by 1920 they tear them down. And they were exquisitely built buildings, and they had a lot of this fireplaces. Maybe you could find, look in the search engine for fireplaces in the Waldorf Astoria 1890. See if they show us a room with a fireplace in it. See if you can do that. We only got a few minutes left. I started late, so that was a quick hour, folks. Again, we really do need to start thinking what it means when the supermarket shelves don't have anything in them. You know, traditionally, places like the floodplains of New Jersey was the garden state. That was the real, you know, fresh vegetables food supply for the urban area of Manhattan and surrounds. And to a degree it still is, but not nearly what it once was. And I can't stress enough that cooperating community gardens, plant your own, get a little a room dedicated for a little grow room for sprouts, for example. If you have any number of things, alfalfa seeds, wheat seeds, almost anything, any bean. You can sprout them and in a matter of days have, you know, good nutritious food to eat. It could get that crazy. I mean, we're having hail events that are just, you know, knocking the windows out of cars and destroying vehicles all through Texas, Arkansas, even up into Michigan, Western New York, Watertown, New York. Just yesterday, I think, had a terrible storm. Intense wind, intense rain, intense hail. These amplifications of this kind of wild weather is just going to pick up as this grand solar minimum deepens and intensifies. And it has everything to do with the, there you go. That's a fine bit of Antiquitech. They called them fireplaces, but they didn't have fire in them. They didn't even have chimneys. They had iron plates, very ornate iron plates with these two little things in the front. You can see look like candlesticks in the front of there, and they somehow emitted electrical energy, and the iron plate in the back of it would heat up.
Wow, I wish I could go close, but I can't.
Right. And that's some of the electrical free energy Antiquitech that they had going on. Yeah, there you go. These grand, they called them grand hotels, grand buildings, grand mansions. The word grand was used quite a bit, but the scale of it was so much larger than say, you know, the scale of the room to the size of the people. doesn't match. These were bigger people who built these buildings, many of them. And there's some photographs that actually show workers tearing out the big steps and putting in steps for us. Yeah, for our stature. Yeah. Yeah, that would be really neat to see what's going on in that. But there was no fire there. And it wasn't designed for a physical fire. So this wireless technology is connected to the fall of the Tartarian Empire and the liquefaction of the earth, where you had this incredible mud flood event that covered many of the bottom floors of a lot of buildings, and some of that is evident in New York City. You can find, oh yeah, that was my thought. I touched on this earlier about mud-flooded buildings in New York, and that I'm looking for them as I go around. But I got excited and I lost my thought. So yeah, there's so much to consider here that I don't always I got too many thoughts going on at the same time. So yeah, that was a quick hour. We started a little late. I want to thank Paula Gloria for manning the controls tonight and helping making a lovely show, and helping me with the research on the images, so I will be back, and hopefully we'll have a guest again, and we'll chat you up some more and try to bring some more information out to you. So again, keep thinking, folks. Think outside the box, and really monitor what's going on with our environment and our food production nationally, because it's a big deal. It is a really big deal. Okay, that's what I got for you tonight. And be safe, everyone, and love to everybody.